This is in part an introduction to my CIP plan, my plan for protecting critical infrastructure and proprietary networks and computer systems around the planet. All the hacks that have been publicized in the last few years are the result of problems that I alone have stumbled upon and have created solutions for. This is a brief, partial introduction to what the lines I've been thinking along in terms of this problem. Securing the cyber infrastructure, some preliminary moves to lock down America's critical industry and civil infrastructure. A plan to secure the national infrastructure from cyber attack by running all industrial SCADA systems connected to the internet exclusively on proprietary Unix systems or even more secure proprietary operating systems. Main talking point items. New hacks are occurring worldwide and accelerating in their frequency. The recent ransomware extortion hack of the British healthcare system, this was written back in, which occurred on 12 May 2017. That's when I wrote this. I started coming up with this plan after seeing that. I'm thinking to myself, why the hell is an agency of such foundational importance as the British healthcare system opening itself to attack? Number one, why are there holes? Number two, why are they so open to the internet? Number three, why don't they have disaster recovery sites so that when their main servers get encrypted by some hacker, they can switch those off and switch on the connection to a disaster recovery site in some other part of the world and continue functioning? This plagued my mind, and I've been observing this for years now. I don't understand. As an ex-high-level computer hacker, I don't understand this because it should not be happening. The recent ransomware extortion hack of the British healthcare system, 12 May 2017, via the WannaCry worm involving the encryption of their server-side databases, was the biggest shock, particularly in its unnerving simplicity. It was unnerving to me. It didn't seem to be unnerving to many other people. Organizations, agencies with access to the resources and elite tier technical guidance as that of the UK should never be vulnerable to such attacks. They should have multiple redundant disaster recovery sites. They should have secure and excessively redundant real-time failover. This has been the standard in the corporate business world since the computer network was invented. I know this for a fact as I installed, configured, and maintain a lot of them myself. Something smells fishy here. The biggest problem is Microsoft's server-side operating systems. They cannot be thoroughly protected from security breaches or hackers. Too many lines of code. I know this from personal fact because in 2005, Microsoft flew me out to the Seattle Redmond, Washington campus, all expenses paid, for 6 days of interviews for security position with the SWAT, Secure Windows Initiative Attack Team, excuse me, and the Red Team, which were two groups that they put together to try to lock down Microsoft code a little bit better, to perform security scans and security assessments of Microsoft software and OSs to find better ways to lock them down. So I have some inside info and special expertise on this issue. That is the issue of how Microsoft software is connected to all these vulnerabilities that are popping up all over the world. Microsoft should be antitrusted immediately, priority one, and or legislative out of the national industry and infrastructure domains. Most of America's industrial infrastructure networks are managed by ICS/SCADA control systems. This stands for Industrial Control System / Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, run on Microsoft server-side operating systems. What constitutes critical national infrastructure? According to the Center for the Protection of National Infrastructure, or the CPNI, they are defined as those facilities, systems, sites, information, people, networks, and processes necessary for a country to function and upon which daily life depends. These systems should have no Microsoft software, at least operating system level software, connected to them in any way, shape, or form. These systems must be locked down via Unix operating systems, and I'm not necessarily talking about Linux operating system colors at this point. The CIA and other security agencies are developing secure proprietary operating systems. This is a research area that should be prioritized forthwith. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, there are 16 critical infrastructure sectors whose assets, systems, and networks, whether physical or virtual, are considered so vital to the United States that their incapacitation or destruction would have a debilitating effect on security, national economic security, national public health or safety, or any combination thereof. Okay, I'm not going to give you a rundown of the 16 sectors right now because that's too much detail. This is supposed to be a perfunctory, quick summary analysis. More specifically, these define electricity generation, transmission, and distribution, gas production, transport, and distribution, oil and oil products production, transport, and distribution, telecommunications, which I guess includes the internet, water supply, including drinking water, wastewater, sewage, stemming of surface water, for example, through dikes and sluices, and etc., etc. They're all industrial. They're all controlled by computer systems with SCADA running on them. Agricultural, food production, and distribution. Heating, for example, natural gas, fuel oil, district heating. Public health, hospitals and ambulances, also controlled by computers. Transportation systems, including fuel supply, railway network, airports, harbors, inland shipping, financial services such as banking and clearing, and security services such as the police and military. Some obvious examples include the AC transformer stations operating as part of the nation's three-grid electricity system, the Western Grid west of the Continental Divide, the Eastern Grid east of the Continental Divide, and the Special Texas Grid. The Special Texas Interconnect is what they call it. Water filtration systems, sewer systems, traffic control systems, airport traffic control systems, oil and gas pipelines, cell phone and microwave towers, internet routers, and internet asynchronous transfer mode switching systems, ATMs, internet domain name servers, and etc. Systems recommendations. Antitrust legislation must be enacted to divide the Microsoft company exactly into one company for server-side OSs and another company for end-user OSs, big applications like MS Office, games, or whatever else. The server-side operating systems and their attendant applications and utilities must be completely separated from the end-user operating system side of the company via congressional legislation. And the big applications like Microsoft Office and all else. I put congressional legislation in all caps because it is imperative that Microsoft operating systems on the server side not be involved in any way, shape, or form with industrial infrastructure, computer infrastructure, or computer networks that are run by public agencies or private industry that are this easy to hack. Further legislation must be enacted to outright outlaw any major industries from using Microsoft Server OSs and to ensure that it is outlawed for ICS/SCADA from ever running on Microsoft server-side OSs. Now understand the server-side, the servers that run the websites, the databases, the utilities, SCADA, all these other things, from the end-user operating systems. The end-user operating systems in Microsoft are fine. They aren't as hackable and fewer hackers are trying to get into them, although they do try to get into them to launch other attacks from within the network on the servers. But that's a different issue. Okay. We should probably not have computers with operating systems at all connected to critical infrastructure. There should probably be terminals, as in the old mainframe days, or some kind of appliance wherein the SCADA system, the software, is burned into the hardware or the firmware, and so you cannot load anything onto the hard drive of such systems because they have no hard drives. Further legislations must be enacted to... Okay, I read that already. Sorry. All critical infrastructure industry must move to proprietary Unix-based operating systems such as Sun Microsystems Solaris, Berkeley Unix, or else. Some of the new class of secure one application or AI operating systems such as Cubes, a compartmentalized approach to IT OSs, or Tails, the amnesic incognito live system, they call it. You know, hacker, I mean, like, you know, security engineer / hacker, good guys, name these things, so they're always going to come up with, you know, funky, hippie, countercultural kind of names, but whatever. Or a good one I've been reading about is Hypervisor, an x86 and with ARM, which I'm not sure exactly what that all is yet, but when I get funding for this project, I'm going to have plenty of time for research on my own and money to employ assistants to help me with further research, in coordination with Zen Advisory Board, Zen Project Governance, and Zen Project 4.5 and 4.6, or any variety of new secure OS options on the market, or about to be on the market. On the market. In terms of network perimeter and DMZ side security, routers, firewalls, proxy servers, reverse proxies, bridges, layer 2 intelligence switches, gateways, load balancers, and any other network connectivity devices should never under any circumstances be run on server-type boxes with software-based operating systems of any kind or hardware disk drives that can house aftermarket software. Back in the early 70s, when I was at the height of my hacker career, my 10-year hacker career, I fell in love with a firewall called Netgear, which was a professional firewall appliance. It was hardware and software in one device for firewalling, for dividing secure side networks from insecure side networks. And they were appliances, which meant there was no operating system, no hard drive upon which to install software. All the above mentioned, in terms of network perimeter and DMZ side security, routers, firewalls, proxy servers, reverse proxies, bridges, layer 2 intelligence switches, gateways, load balancers, and any other network connectivity devices should never under any circumstances be run on server-type boxes with software-based operating systems of any kind or hard disk drives that can house aftermarket software. All the above-mentioned networking hardware must be run on dedicated hardware appliance-type devices exclusively, if possible, where possible, when possible. To maximize the security of an Ethernet or other network protocol, no device should ever be run on a computer with an operating system in the form of software, but only on firmware OSs where the software is burned into the hardware and a dedicated appliance-type device. Future consideration should be given to researching and looking at the possibility of designing and building a SCADA system appliance with no server hardware, no software-based operating system, and no disks that any form of software of any kind can be loaded onto. This also must be legislated. SCADA and any industrial control systems similar to SCADA we must consider the possibility of making that into an appliance as well. Any systems employing TCP/IP protocols that can connect to the internet should use round-robin IP software technologies. Further discussion. Here is an excerpt of a Facebook conversation via messaging where a Facebook friend asked me to explain the basics of the UK healthcare system hack. Facebook message on May 15, 2017. Your question requires a long and complicated answer. I used to be a very high-level hacker and cyber terrorist war expert advisor. Microsoft wanted to hire me. I subcontracted for U.S. government agencies, but I retired from IT altogether in 2008, and as you are probably aware, the technology in this field advances by the minute, literally. A big part of the problem is that people who run the networks at these big organizations don't take computer security seriously enough, even though they focus on it much more than in my day. I hacked into NYU and other university computer systems in the early 2000s, when major colleges and universities took no notice whatsoever of security issues and were totally wide open to attack. And it was my hack that in part motivated some universities to realize that they were vulnerable and that being vulnerable was harmful to every network connected to the internet, because criminals will hack into unsuspecting, undefended networks in large chains so they could launch complicated attacks from those compromised systems and thereby make it more difficult to backhack to find the source of attacks and the criminals behind them. When I was working in computer security, all the companies and organizations I worked for, including New York Life, U.S. Trust, West LB German Bank, and etc., had well-configured DR sites. DR stands for disaster recovery. This is what I was explaining all of these things to a guy who knows nothing about computer security. They set up computer centers in locations around the country so that if their main facility, for example, their server farms as they're called, had problems, they could immediately transfer operations over to the DR site, it's called failover, and continue functioning. Every night, all the transactions for that day would be copied over to that company's DR site, and then the internet link would be closed to protect the DR integrity of the site. The integrity of the DR site, sorry. So, if some criminals managed to encrypt server hard drives, as happened last week, the company or organization could shut down that segment of their network and switch over to the servers at the DR site and thereby keep functioning without serious interruption. What puzzles me about the events of last week are two things. Why large, well-funded, technologically sophisticated organizations like the healthcare system in the UK did not have functioning DR sites, and why these organizations are using Microsoft products to run their server-side operations. Microsoft operating systems cannot be fully secured. Too many lines of code mean too many potential holes through which criminals can penetrate. Few of the companies I work for ran MS Windows on the server side. Fewer problems on the end user side, but extreme danger running MS Microsoft on the server side. They all ran Sun Microsystems, IBM proprietary mainframes, or other proprietary Unix-based OS systems. Or some of them ran open source, which I'm not sure I agree with. It totally baffles me that the UK would be running Windows on their servers. Another take on this issue is that when I was in the field, I was constantly campaigning that MS was and still is a monopoly, and their monopoly should be broken up on the basis of server operating systems versus end-user operating systems, meaning that Microsoft should continue with OSs on the end-user side, but the server-side OSs should be taken over by a different company or shut down altogether. I hope this gives you enough insight into your question to research and discover deeper answers on your own. Thanks.